fragile yellow bird, the tiny yellow bill, perched upon my windowsill. I coaxed him with a morsel of bread and smashed the window on his head. Now that's not a true story, but I tell it to make a point. Words paint pictures. Vivid words paint a colorful picture. Boring words paint a black and white picture. We are all speakers. We need to know what masterpiece are we painting with the words we use in our stories. Now, for years I taught police officers how to testify in court. Many officers, for you who are old enough to remember the show Dragnet, testify like Joe Friday. Just the facts, ma'am. Boring. We paint pictures with words and we hear in stereo, but you remember in video. As a speaker, the words you use create that video that your audience will remember long after they've left. I want to share two stories about the same event. First story, police officer on stand testifying. I received a dispatch on a domestic violence call. I responded to the scene. Upon my arrival, I saw the suspect. I advised him he was under arrest. He refused my commands to place his hands behind his back. After a brief struggle, I was able to place him in handcuffs and take him to jail. Boring. Now, take the same story and create a masterpiece. I was sitting in my cruiser when the dispatcher's voice blared across my radio. There was a hint of panic in her voice. Any crew, respond to violent domestic in progress. Immediately, I volunteered for the call. I dropped my car into drive, crushed the accelerator, and sped to the scene with my siren blaring, my lights flashing. I probably looked like a speeding Christmas tree. Upon my arrival at the victim's house, I slammed on my brakes. I bailed out of my car. I rushed across the front yard, and there standing in front of me was Goliath. 6'3", 275 pounds, arms and chest ripped with muscles. And laying off to the right was a heap of crumbled clothing. The wife. Bloodied. Bruised. My first thought was, it was a pale, lifeless mannequin. I turned to Goliath and I screamed at him, "Get on the ground! Put your hands behind your back! You're under arrest!" He stood motionless. I repeated my command more forcefully. I said, "Get on the ground! Put your hands behind your back! You're under arrest!" His steely glare and fighter stance screamed everything I needed to know. I was about to be in the fight of my life. But instinct and training kicked in. I grabbed my taser, I ripped it from the holster, I pointed it at his massive chest, and I pulled the trigger. 50,000 volts of electricity went coursing through his body. For a moment, he stood erect like a tall oak, and then he tumbled to the ground. And then he pleaded like a baby being, or a child being spanked. "Please stop!" I stood at a safe distance. After the 5-second ride, that's how long 50,000 volts was going through him, I told him in a much calmer voice, "Sir, place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest." He did not comply immediately. So I inched forward, cautiously. Every nerve in my body was waiting for him to jump into action and start to fight, which is why I had my finger on the trigger. for another 50,000 volt ride. I repeated, "Sir, place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest." And slowly he put his hands behind his back as he whispered to me, "Officer, I'm so sorry." I knelt down on him with my knee in the center of his massive back. I put the handcuffs on him, and as I stood him up, he dropped his chin to his chest, and he repeated, "Officer, I'm so sorry." Words paint pictures. What masterpieces are you creating with your stories? Thank you.